Just a little bit. That's long.
You can go for 8 hours on Google Live.
Wow, we are live.
We are alive and live. You can see how that throws you off. Doing a bit of a sound check. Sound check. Doing this, doing that. We're about ready to go live with the Broken Brain here. Make sure we can hear. Lee, say something.
Hey, what's going on out there, Broken Brainers?
Nice.
I'm not sure exactly how we say that.
Broken Brainers, Broken Brain, Broken Brainiacs.
I like Brainiacs. I think we have to go with Brainiacs.
All right, here we go into our intro, and here it comes.
The Broken Brain.
It's like on the camera.
It's like, oh, here it is.
And welcome, good morning, good evening, and good day to all of you out there in podcast and YouTube land. All you podcasters, podlings, YouTubers, tubers, potatoes, couch potatoes, brainiacs, and all the people in between of those ethnic groups that I just named and came up with. So you're welcome for that. Welcome to the Broken Brain. I am Dwight Hurst, your psychotherapist and third level Jenga black belt.
Wow, very nice. Well, my name is Lee. I am the co-podcaster. I'm guessing that's what I'm going to call myself today. And I am a gladiator knife enthusiast.
There we are. Co-podcaster. That's like coping, but with podcasting.
Yes, exactly.
Co-podcasting skills.
My co-podcasting skills, they are improving every day.
Do you get that? People coming in and asking for coping skills in therapy? I find that.
Coping skills therapy. You know what? That sounds really familiar. I think I've had that a few times.
We're going to be talking about some coping skills today, because today, not only is this our very first live broadcast of a recording, this is also all alone, standalone podcast episode. Today is a podcast mini.
Podcast Mini is a podcast with a 7.9-inch screen.
That's right. It has a smaller screen than a regular podcast, and it is our miniature episode, meaning it's a little shorter. Lee and I are going to blunder through this live recording jazz and see how that goes.
Let's see how we go. I'm not used to being short, though. This could be kind of a difficult thing.
This is right. The perspective makes me look much bigger and taller than you. Which,
I know.
As anyone who knows us in real life, is absolutely representative of the way it is.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is. People always come in and ask me, man, that Dwight is so much taller and a lot more handsome than you are.
And it seems like just proportionately, he's closer to the screen. That's what they always say.
I know, but you never know.
While we are doing this, just so you know, you can watch this on YouTube, which if you're watching this, you're probably watching it on YouTube already. You can also listen to this on iTunes, which you probably are already. So today we're going to be talking about the miracle question. That's the name of today's episode.
Interesting.
Yes.
We need to have some crazy music for that. The ring or something, I don't know. All right. Yeah,
we got the intro music going again. There we go. That's the, yeah.
Okay, there it is.
No, that worked. The miracle question comes, of course, from the world of solution-focused therapy. What would you say about solution-focused therapy in general, Lee?
You know, I think that it's a good way to, I guess, work on something small. Does that make sense? I guess when I think about it, I think, hey, someone's coming in, we're not going to necessarily dive into all the issues from their past, from, just all that real nitty gritty stuff, but it's just more of a brief, hey, I have a problem with my son.
Neighbor's son's dog.
Yes, my neighbor's son's dog.
Specific problem is what it was designed for, actually. No, solution-focused therapy was actually a response to managed healthcare, as there were many insurance plans and programs that only allowed a certain amount of sessions for people to have when they came in. They have come up with things to try to make that still meaningful levels or meaningful interventions, meaningful type of treatment. And so solution-focused therapy was, some of the principles of solution-focused therapy are interesting. It's kind of like you say, I think the whole model is built around like very few sessions. You quickly focus on what's working and you try to kind of go from there. And so I don't know about you, but in that way, I am not fully a solution-focused therapist because I feel like there are times where you do have to get deeper into the problems, the pathologies of what's going on.
I would definitely agree that I am probably the same way, that they may come in and say, hey, this is why I'm coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, as you're going through these small pieces, you're realizing, okay, well, a few years ago, I was involved in a car wreck, or a few years ago,
Yeah.
you know, I was at war, and there's some other issues that are starting to
Yes.
rear their ugly head.
So there's other techniques that can kind of dig into the more trauma-based kinds of things. But I find that there's a lot of features of solution-focused therapy that are really helpful, particularly if you are in a situation where you only have a few sessions or something like that. From a consumer advocacy standpoint, if you're looking for a therapist and you know that your insurance plan only allows you 5 sessions or some ridiculously small amount, then you might want to look for someone who is comfortable working with a solution-focused approach, because they're going to right away, kind of right out of the box, say, all right, let's not delve into anything except what's working. Let's focus on that. I will say this. I don't believe that there's anything particularly moral or ethically better about having fewer sessions, though, if you don't have to.
No, I'd agree that sometimes you need more and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, hey, you know, it's been 2 or 3 sessions and you've done what you needed to do. I mean, it's always a possibility that something small could come in and then, hey.
But you never want to impose that. There's nothing like inherently better about someone who improves in 3 sessions versus someone who improves after going to therapy for a year. It just has to do with different types of problems.
Oh yeah, there's, you know, like I said, they may have tons of things from the past, but at the same time, they may not. They may just come in and say, hey, I have a problem with my neighbor's son's dog.
Right. And the complicated relationship that we all know that is.
I know.
Let's not get into that's a whole nother podcast for that one. So now that we've trashed on solution-focused therapy for a bit, we're going to go ahead and advocate that you use this principle from it. There's a lot of principles actually that I really like. One of the key principles of solution-focused therapy that I believe in very strongly is treating your client as the expert, and that they are the expert of their own problem. I'm an expert of certain things. Lee's an expert of certain things. I think we said Jenga and knives.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you know, Pokemon maybe, whatever it is. No.
That's Mike.
Hopefully your therapist is a little bit expert in the area of psychology and therapy as well as Pokemon, and Jenga.
I mean, seriously, you got to have Pikachu there as well. I mean.
So, but you're the expert of your problem. You're the expert of your own feelings, your hopes, your dreams, all that kind of stuff. Very, very powerful. Also, another part of it is that the answer to your questions is going to come from inside yourself.
Ooh, I like that.
It's very Zen in that way. A lot of therapy is we rip off Buddhism all the time. That's why I use the word Zen so frequently. So this technique, it really goes to the core of that theory, which is that you are going to find your own answer. That's where we get to the miracle question. Is that the kind of sound you had in mind?
That is perfect.
That whole intro was just a stall so I could find that sound effect. So the miracle question in solution-focused therapy is, you want to hold on?
Got it.
It's a great visual guy. All right, how would you characterize this question? If you went to sleep tonight and woke up alive the next morning, then you have a solution. And a miracle happened that solved your problem. What would it be like? That's the question. If you went to sleep tonight and a miracle happened that solved your problem, what would that be like? So the idea behind the miracle question, there we go. I've just caused 7 seizures by doing that. All right. That's a great visual gag for the podcast too. For those of you listening to the audio, go check out the YouTube channel. Plug. So the point of this is when you are stuck with something, it's like, I don't believe that my problem even has a solution, which can be, I don't know, a fairly frustrating place of hopelessness. Ultimately, it's not even, very humorous. If you're hopeless for long enough, you can even become suicidal about something.
Extremely depressed, I would agree.
Yeah. That's the audio version of that feeling.
Is that that's the depressed audio
That's the
feeling?
depressed audio feeling.
I wonder if that's how. I wonder if that's how some people feel when they think about that, right? If your life was to change, and you wake up, how would you really feel? Like, how could you explain that? Like, to me, somebody asked me that question, that would be really difficult, I think.
Well, it's actually a really interesting question to kind of dig into. If you think about that question like this, if you went to sleep and you had a miracle that occurred, and by the morning time your problem was solved, you wake up into a day where you're already past the point of solution. You're in a world where your problem isn't a problem anymore, it's been solved. Then what is it like? And I think the key there is that second part of the question is, what is it like? I find that there's a couple things that don't happen when you ask this question. If I ask this question in session and I say, hey, you're struggling with this problem, this neighbor's kid's dog, and what are you going to do about your situation? And I ask the miracle question. I don't know. Sometimes here's what I don't find. Go ahead, and why don't you ask me the miracle question, Lee?
So Dwight, thanks for coming in today. So I've got a question for you. I don't think you
can help me very much, but okay.
Well, and maybe we can look at that. Maybe you might be able to help yourself a little bit more today. So the question is, if you went to sleep tonight, and
I plan on it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that sleeping is part of your plan, because if not, then we'd be talking about something a little different. And if a miracle happened as you fell asleep, and did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
And a miracle happened, solving the problem you're coming in to see me for, what would it be like?
Well, you know what? I would just talk to my kids again. Thanks a lot, Doc. I'm out of here.
All right. That'll be $100.
Well worth it.
There we go. Thank you. We're going to take a bow.
I usually have a live studio audience in my sessions so that they can do that. They can applaud. No, see, I don't really see that happen much when you ask that question. It's not like this magic trick that all of a sudden come up with the solution. I think that's the problem. If you ask this question and you think to yourself, I need to know what the solution is, I'm going to come up with that answer. Sometimes we are very linear in our thought process and we're like, oh no, okay, you're asking me what the solution is. But that's not the question. The question is, if the solution happened, what would your life be like? So sometimes I add the little caveat, tell me what would be different without telling me what the solution is.
I like that a lot better. I like that you're giving them something to work on. You're giving them, it's kind of like giving them a little bit of homework, right? Before they just come up with, here's the answer. It's a matter of, well, we're going to have a couple different ways to get there, right?
Yes.
That it's 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Instead of, oh, we're done.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's really trying to focus on what would look different, and especially in some ways what would feel different. If you woke up tomorrow and your problem was solved, then how would it feel different? So Lee, thanks for coming in, and tell me, if you were to go to sleep tonight, you had a miracle happen and your problem was solved, and really should have asked you what your problem was when you came in, but we only have 5 sessions.
Yeah,
so
I'm just having some severe anxiety about school starting.
Okay.
And
that's not funny. I don't know why people are making fun of you for that problem.
It's just a really painful thing to think about, because there's just too many people around. I don't know how to handle it. Too much homework.
Okay. I'm with you.
And the girls beat me up.
I have always had that problem. Still do in some ways. So let me ask you, if you were to go to bed tonight and while you were sleeping, there was some kind of a magical occurrence, like a miracle took place, and you woke up tomorrow and this whole problem is solved. I want you to think about that. If you woke up and you started just living your life the way that you do, but the problem was no longer a problem, it had been solved, what would your life be like? And I don't want you to tell me what the solution is. I want you to focus on what would look and feel different about your life.
I would say that the first thing that I feel is just probably a sense of peace. I think that's something that I seem to be wanting and can't find.
Great. Well, that's actually a very good and rich answer. And so where we go from there, and this is what you can do as you ask yourself that question, is we'd say, what does peace represent?
So peace would represent Probably less anxiety.
An
Um,
escape, a relief from anxiety,
Probably
perhaps.
I think close friends.
Okay. And another question we could go a couple different ways with this. We could say, so what would your life be like if you had that peace? And what decisions might you make differently if you had that peace? Those types of things. Are there any chances you would take that you wouldn't take otherwise? What would it be like to be that guy walking around with that peace? Boy, that guy's got quite a piece, people would say. But they mean PEACE instead of, I don't know what the other, like a gun. I don't know what the other kind of, yeah.
Right.
He's carrying a gun in the 1920s would be what the other people would mean, the gangsters that would comment on that.
He's got a nice looking piece.
Yeah, see, I went a different way. So you can see where right away, if you focus on the feelings that would give, if my problem was solved, how would I feel and what would be different and what decisions would I make differently? You are already starting to experience some kind of solution focused planning, right?
Oh, yeah, you're giving them, they've kind of already got the goal, right? That the goal is waking up the next morning and everything is good, but they're not necessarily defining that goal yet, that they have to go and take the basic steps of, here's this piece to that goal, here's this piece, here's this piece, here's this piece. And then, again, that solution at the end of, okay, the goal really is all of these things.
Yeah. And what I liked about your answer, what being, obviously you were very emotionally focused right away. Possibly we're both emotion guys. It's possible that we're biased towards emotion. One of the things that was very strong about that answer is that it was feelings based, and now you know that whatever you need is going to involve building peace.
That's
that
right.
kind of thing. I used to use this when I worked in a college for a while, and we did a lot of like career and educational counseling where people would come in and say, I don't know what to do with my life. And one of the things that we'd say is, if you can't pick a program of study or you can't pick a job, we started using this miracle question where we'd say, if you went to bed tonight and a miracle happened and you woke up knowing what field you were going into, what would that be like? And they'd be like, well, I would feel blah, 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 whatever. Usually peace would come up, usually. And what are the things, the other component of this? See, there's the emotional side with the feelings, but then there is the practical side. The practical side is
the
the way
things
to pronounce that.
What brings you peace?
What brings you peace? What would it be like in order to have peace? What would have to have changed? What would the miracle have affected? And so sometimes people would say, well, I would be sure emotionally I'd feel better because I knew what job I was going to have someday or what to study in school. Yeah. But I would also, it would have to be something that I could have a family. So I have to have some times where I'm at home. I wouldn't have to work 12 hours a day like I am now or whatever. And then you look at that and say, well, you already actually named a characteristic of what you're looking for.
You got a good plan.
Yeah. And so you start to look at what components need to be there in order for that to happen. I would have peace. Well, if I had peace, what would that be like? Well, I probably wouldn't ever drink myself to sleep every night, still ever, and be like, okay, well, what does ever mean in that sentence? I don't know.
I don't know. That kind of like, that's kind of peaceful to me. You don't remember a lot. You wake up the next morning and
so
you have to keep drinking.
Yeah. I wouldn't need that anymore, by the way. That just came out in the scenario. And boy, wouldn't that be cool? And all of a sudden we've got another component and another thing to think about. So I did this once at a conference. I was working with a bunch of teachers who taught in an adult education setting. And it was interesting because my uncle, rather my wife's uncle, was there. So this is like a little homage to him. He showed up. He worked in that industry. And I didn't know he was going to be there. I didn't even know he worked in that school district or whatever. He just came walking in. He's like, "Hey, saw you on the agenda." Sits down. What do you got? And as it turned out, it was one of those really, really enjoyable times where there's only 5 or 6 people.
Sometimes those are like the best though. It's
really
close knit. Everybody's a little bit more vulnerable. They're not as scared.
Yep.
I like it.
It's great when it starts in a room that seats like 50 or 100 people. And so in some ways, I think there's a tipping point where you'd rather have like 5 or 6 is doable, but you'd rather have 100 than like 2.
Yes.
At least for me. And so luckily there were a few, 5 or 6 people. And so I kind of was like, all right, everyone, come on in. Let's make this a little more intimate, because I like to creep out people right before I present. So
you got to put them on the edge of their seats right before you get going. You can't just like let them lean back and think about things.
And one of the things that was very interesting is I was just introduced to this idea of using a miracle question when there are people who aren't following through with their educational goals. Because these were people who work at school, either counselors or teachers who worked with people who are coming back to finish their high school equivalency or whatever. And I had somebody come up when we role played, and I said, pick a problem or pick a student in your mind that you want to pretend to be. And, when I asked that question, so what would happen if you went to sleep tonight and by some magic you'd woken up, and then all the teachers corrected my English, and then you'd got woken up.
English teachers or
even math teachers were correcting my grammar. But anyway,
that's bad.
And she came up with an answer that was like she said she was trying to do it like the student would do it. And it was kind of dismissive. This is the other thing. You might think this is a silly question. And if you say, what would it be like if my problems were solved? Well, I'd have plenty of money or something like that.
That
right?
does sound like a kid question.
Yeah.
Or a kid answer.
Well, and that is like a teen or something. I've asked this to be like, I'd be a millionaire. What can you do with that, Mr. Therapist? And so
Take
right
more
away, the next natural thing to do is to say, what does money represent to you? And it was interesting because she actually came up with a very emotional answer.
Wow.
And the really great thing was that at every Thanksgiving from then on, my uncle would come in and tell everybody, my wife's uncle would tell everybody in the family, like, oh, he did this thing. This lady got up and she just like opened up. And it was great because as he told the story, every time he told it, she was more emotional to where it was she just got into tears. And I'm like, I don't remember any tears, but it's like, whatever.
She's kind of swimming down the river of tears at this point. Next
And
year,
she
she's
broke
got the
down.
ocean.
So every family event, it got a little bit better. But
So you were
the
getting major
story.
props from this happening.
it was awesome.
You're benefiting from
Yeah.
it.
So that's why we're doing an episode on it, because it made me look good to a very small group of people who already love me.
So what does looking good mean to you, Dwight?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just always a little bit out of reach. Well, so this is an interesting thing here. If we look at this, I think that there is an element of the follow-up, right? So the follow-up to the miracle question that we're kind of already touching on is whatever you answer, you want to say, what does that represent? What does that mean to you? There is, one of the things that, psychology came from, philosophy, really.
Yeah.
And in philosophy, they talk a lot about what they call symbolic representation. What are the symbols in your life and what are the rituals around those symbols? And sometimes we say things like, for example, money, I need money, a job, I want a relationship, those kinds of things. And we don't often stop to ask ourselves, why do I want that? What does that mean to me?
Well, that's true. I would say that there's a lot of people that that's just part of life. They just go and do. There's no thought process. There's no taking a time out. There's no 5 minutes to themselves, right, of thinking, why are these things important? Why are they not important? Why am I doing them?
Yeah. One of the things I find with that, especially with the job and money thing, a lot of people say, I need a better job, I need more money. And it's important. It's actually important to ask yourself that question of why do I want that? And because whenever I've done that with people in session or just on the street or wherever I happen to harass people and say, hey, why do you want money? Really answer that question. It sounds like a stupid question, but why do you want it? Well, why do I want it? More options for me and my family.
Yeah.
More things that we can do. Maybe vacation is one of the things. Maybe paying the bills on time. Maybe.
Well, and I would imagine
Go
that
ahead.
as you continue to kind of breach those questions, that I think ultimately kind of goes down to, right, Maslow and his lovely pyramid, right, that what does money really mean? It means safety. It means security.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a form of happiness. It's that I feel like my family's taken care of. I feel like I can do everything that I need to do. I can provide.
And when I have that answer, when I have those answers, you're absolutely right. It helps me then to make my plan because I'm more likely to make a better goal that affects my money if I have all those things spelled out. Because one of the most common things we do when we need more money is we work more.
Yeah, I think work harder, right? And that's just going to make everybody happier.
Yeah. And sometimes that's useful and sometimes we have to. But the thing that we have to keep in mind is that there's a balance of those things. You have to look at it and say, wait a minute, I have to keep in mind why I want it. Because if I work all the time and it damages my family life, and then I get into fights with the spouse, or I start fights with myself or whatever, where I'm like, oh, I'm working too much and I'm burning out and I hate being home because I should be working, and I get into arguments with my kids and whatever, I'm losing the thing that I really supposedly want the money for.
Yeah, you're
I'm
losing.
damaging it.
They're not going to want to. They're not going to want to hang out with you. They're not going to want to be around dad or mom if you're a pain in the butt and you're ornery and irritable. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go to John's house because I can't
Because
stand
John's
being
a
here.
laid back, cool dude.
Oh yeah, and then John's dad, he's always home and he gets to hang out and they get to go play and do things, and then
Then they adopt your kid
I know, and then losing your kid, and here we are, and now
This
we're back to
year-
that question.
at the Sundance Film Festival. That story will be played out because our screenplay's gotten picked up. That's really why we're doing it.
Yeah.
No, so what you have to keep in mind is you have to find a balance of those things. And as you're making your plan, then you have to also look. When you do keep that in mind, I had a friend of mine who several years ago, he was in kind of an entry-level job, and he was working and he was working some part-time jobs, and he and his wife just had a baby, and they were trying to move forward and move out of their apartment and buy a house, and they had all these like things that were their plan, and they assumed this is what we will do. But they got to talking about this kind of stuff, and it was really interesting. This is just legitimately a friend of mine. It's not code for he was my client or whatever. I do have friends that aren't
Yes.
therapists or clients.
Friends.
And he said, hey, you know what we decided? We just decided we're going to live in our apartment for another several years and keep renting. And I'm going to quit my part-time jobs. And just that way I'll just work and I'll go home and be with my wife and my kid. And they cut out certain expenses that they just assumed they had to do. And that this pressure to say we need to get into a house by this time, they just put it on hold on purpose because they decided the deeper underlying reason why we want to be in a house is to be closer together and have a better environment. And right now, the only way to do that is through his absence because his wife wasn't working at the time, whatever, who knows. So you see what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think it's great because they decided to truly choose happiness. They decided to choose a good base for their family, right? Okay, we want to move into a house. We want to do all these things, but there's no way that we're going to be able to really afford those things, not necessarily monetarily, but emotionally be able to afford getting a house and doing those things. If you're working 2 jobs, you're home for 2 or 3 hours a night, the child's already asleep, and then you have a Saturday that you may be able to spend some time if you have that day off, and then here we go, and we start all over again. So I like the fact that they chose, what was that show, The Pursuit of Happiness, right? With
Will Smith.
Will Smith, that's right.
And Jaden Smith. His son played his son in the movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's just that same idea.
Of making sure that you have the priorities and you're looking at what you really want deep down. And that's the whole key of what the miracle question is supposed to provide. There we go. I hope that you've enjoyed this wonderful live video and audio broadcast of The Broken Brain. I will tell you what, Lee.
Yes, Dwight.
I hope that those out there in those YouTubers and podlings out there and podling in the podcast and YouTube land will hop on over to the website at dwighthurst.com.
That's
If you
right.
can go to dwighthurst.com/podcast, you can see the current episode. Well, hear the current episode or see it if it's today's
now.
episode. You can also go from there to our podcast archives. You can go to our store section. You can go to some of the other projects that are going on that are sponsored by The Broken Brain. Currently, we're doing a weekly DBT skills workshops right here on YouTube.
Amazing stuff.
If you see those, it's a way to access some DBT skill instruction for those of you that could benefit from that. You can also find we have a short story contest that's available still. It should be running through the end of September. If you're watching this currently and live or recently after it was taped, or maybe that's long gone and Lee and I are long dead and in our graves if you're watching this far into the future. I'm assuming YouTube will leave it up even after I'm not alive to keep my channel current.
You also got to remember our Broken Brain t-shirts.
That's right. Yeah, check out our store. We've got Broken Brain swag that we're inventing. So we've got the Broken Brain T-shirts are available.
What about
And
Brainy?
some other things. And yeah, you can
leave Brainy out.
hop on over to Vine if you're feeling silly and want to check out our mascot, Brainy the Broken Brain. So until next week, and until next time we do this on YouTube, thanks for being here.
Sayonara.
People don't know we dance like this every time.